From Junkyard to Short Block, it's Mopar Magic, today on Engine Power.
Welcome to Engine Power. Today, we're taking care of all of you Mopar fans with an RB or raised block big block build that's going to use the latest parts in today's aftermarket.
We satisfied you big block Chevy fans by building a 572-inch anvil that made 750 horsepower on gas right out of the pump. Then we surprised the big block Ford crowd with a 557-inch blue oval bad boy that got the internet buzzing. Wow. It made 754 horsepower naturally aspirated. Then we sprayed it with a 300 shot of nitrous to lay down an impressive graph on our Superflow.
Holy cow.
1,080 on power and 1,119 on torque, and still on pump gas, all with a girdled 2-bolt main stock block.
Just like a lot of you, we needed a suitable core to start with, so we made a call to the Mopar professionals at Stevens Performance down in Anderson, Alabama. Now, we told them our plans for this engine, and they jumped at the opportunity to help us out. They pulled this 440 out of a parts car, disassembled it to make sure the block had no obvious damage, then sent us everything in a couple of boxes.
We still have to finish the teardown and knock the heavy chunks off before we send it out to get machined, and that will include getting it align honed, equalizing and squaring the decks, and also boring and then honing the cylinders with torque plates. Removing the 2-bolt main caps will free up the crank. It's always good practice to loosen them from the outside in, which is the reverse torque order from when it was assembled. The crankshaft's casting number is 2206160, making it a forged steel piece. We're stroking this engine to over 500 cubic inches, so we'll put this one in our parts gauge for another build down the road. Now we can see the casting number that designates this block as a 1966 to 1972, and the actual casting date is right above it, 12/21 of 71. So this block is from 1971.
Here's something you don't see every day. The crank was resting on the original bearings from 1971. We ran some more numbers and declared this engine to have a 9.7 to 1 compression ratio, and it was fitted with a 4-barrel carburetor. Now this thing produced 370 horsepower with 480 pound-feet of torque, making this the last year for one of the big power-producing muscle car engines. Now it's off to Shacklett's Auto Machine to get its freshen up.
After a few days at the machine shop, our Mopar's foundation is back in our hands. While at Shacklett's Automotive, our block was align honed, which gets all the main bearing bores aligned and sized. We supplied these ARP studs because they had to be in for this operation. Anytime that you switch from bolts to studs, it will distort the main cap differently due to the way that the fastener actually clamps the cap. Then the decks were equalized, which puts the height and plane of the decks equal distance to the center line of the crank. After that, the cylinders were bored and then honed using a torque plate, which gets torqued to the deck to simulate a cylinder head installed. This allows for the cylinder to be honed in a controlled manner to maintain proper bore geometry. All the machining steps were done in top-notch fashion, which goes to show that Shacklett's is a quality machine shop. But before we can put it in the cleaner, we still have a little bit left to do. And since this is going to be a 512-inch racy street bullet, we're going to treat it accordingly. Which starts with a die grinder and carbide burr to remove casting flash from the lifter valley. These thin areas are known to break off and migrate right to the oil pump. So we're getting rid of them. Next up, we'll smooth the oil inlet on the block, along with the oil holes feeding the mains. Removing sharp edges anywhere oil flows reduces turbulence, which increases flow.
Since this block was thermally cleaned, it's a must to go ahead and clean all the oil galleries really well. Here's a little word of advice. You always want to make sure to final clean the block you're working on yourself, because you never know what could have been left in it. Now we like to use this 10-piece brush kit you can pick up directly from Goodson. Now you can use it just like it is, or here's a little tip. We cut the ring off the end of the handle, and for a good reason. It allows us to chuck it up in a drill, so the galleries can be cleaned faster. With a squirt of WD-40 on the bristles, let the cleaning begin. Work the brush the entire length of the gallery. The purpose is to loosen up any foreign matter that could be in them. But don't stop there. Make sure you clean every oil passage possible, hence the different size brushes in the kit.
The final step is to wash the entire block. We'll be right back.
All lined up?
Yes, sir.
These things are run awesome. Welcome back. Now it's time to get the short block assembled. Now the rotating assembly came to us from the Mopar Stroker Kit experts, the 440 Source. Now they balance every system in-house so they know it's within their specs. Now this thing comes with a crankshaft, rods, pistons and pins, Cleveite main and rod bearings, as well as Total Seal file fit Molly rings, and don't forget the locks. The crankshaft is a brand new 4340 forged steel platinum series. Now it's a non-twist forging that's induction hardened and CNC machined. Now the rod and main journals are standard sizing and the counterweights have been profiled or rounded. This crank will handle 1,000+ horsepower and has a 4.250 stroke. Their rods are made from aircraft quality 4340 forged steel and are lightweight. Now these are also in their Platinum series. They measure 7/100 from the center of the big end to the center of the small end. Now they get heat treated, shot peened, and x-rayed, which shows us they have excellent quality control. Plus they're finished on American-made Sun & equipment for super tight tolerances. These forged pistons are made from 2618 T6 aluminum for superior strength without sacrificing weight. Now they have a 16th, 16th, 3/16 ring groove, and the oil returns are drilled. Now up top, the valve reliefs will work with the camshaft up to about 700-inch lift. Underneath, the pin is a big block Chevy 990 diameter. Now if you look close, you can see reinforcement ridges in the forging, which just adds extra strength to the piston. Now the skirts are diamond finished with a tolerance of plus or minus 2.5 10,000ths. These are 30-over pistons for a final bore size of 4,350.
We show how to check tolerances on a regular basis. Even if you don't see it, we check them. Here's what we have for this build. Now, if you remember, the minimum vertical oil clearance you need on any performance engine build is 1/1000th per inch of shaft diameter. You can have a little more, and we do. Our main bearing journals measure 2.7492, so by our standard, we should have at least 27 10,000ths clearance. Ours measure out between 30 and 32 10,000ths, so they're in the good. Our rod journals measure 2.1993, and they also have between 30 and 32 10,000ths clearance, so they're in the green as well. This is a step that no one should ever skip. There is no guesswork in engine building.
Engine blocks will need a little facelift after machining. We're spraying this one with Dupli-Color engine enamel with ceramic. It withstands temps to 500 degrees and is oil and fluid resistant. The color is Chrysler blue. Now Cleveite main bearings are laid in and get slicked up with a high viscosity assembly lube.
This trick rear main seal is available exclusively from Jeff Gunther at Fast Fish Auto Parts. It features a unique dual lip design to help eliminate leaks. It's a single split, low friction design. Make a single cut, lube it up, and slide it over the crank. They also sent us this billet seal retainer to complete the install. Now we're ready to lay this 440 Source forged crank into place, making sure the rear seal drops in as well. We always put the ARP studs in after the crank is in, so there is no risk of nicking a journal. The lube caps go on now and get snugged down. Next, a mallet is used to tap the crank fore and aft to align the center thrust bearing. The mains get torqued to 100 pound-feet using ARP Ultra Torque. And the thrust is checked. We have 4/1000ths, which turns on the green light to continue. Instead of a factory-type side seal, we're going to use silicone. With it in place, we can tap the retainer all the way down and tighten the bolts. The fun has just begun, so stay with us. Welcome back to part one of our Stroker Big Block Mopar build. Now, with the crank laid in for good, the next order of business is to slide in our new camshaft. Now, it's a hydraulic roller that Comp Cams has ground custom for us to take advantage of our extra 72 cubic inches and better breathing induction. Duration is 252 degrees on the intake and 262 degrees on the exhaust. The lobe separation is 112 degrees. Lift at the valve will be 640 thousandths on the intake side and 672 on the exhaust with our rocker ratio. Remember to take your time on the install so you don't gouge up your new cam bearings. With the cam in its place, the Summit Racing billet steel timing chain set is ready to go on now. The bolts are torqued to 40 pound-feet, and a Pioneer Products cam button will limit the end play. It has a billet steel cam gear and a multi-keyway crank gear, so cam degreeing is a snap. The cam is installed straight up, which means the intake center line is the same as the lobe separation. In this case, 112 degrees. The pistons are next, and the pins are secured with a single spiral lock on each side. We've already file fit the rings, with the top having a 20 thousandths gap, the second having a 22 thousandths gap, and the oil rails gap are 18 thousandths. Using assembly oil, we'll pre-lube the rings and skirts of the piston. Apply assembly lube on the bearing, and drop the assembly in. A few light taps will get the rings in the bore.
Down low, the cap can go on, and it gets snugged down with ARP 8740 rod bolts. With all 8 installed, they'll get torqued to 60 pound-feet. Now the oil pickup is threaded in. It's a match to our oil pan that goes on soon. The Summit Racing timing cover can go on now, along with the Milodon windage tray. To seal up the bottom end, this Milodon 7-quart low-profile pan. It fits 64 and earlier A, B, C, and E bodies. ARP fasteners will secure it. We're installing a Summit Racing SFI-approved balancer with our Matco installer. Like all our engines, we're verifying TDC and aligning the pointer where it's supposed to be. The RB's oil pump is externally mounted. This is a Melling high-volume unit we painted Chrysler blue to match the block. Part 1 of this build went from this grungy block needing some attention to this eye-catching complete short block that any Mopar fan would click his heels twice and make a wish for. We have a little time left, but it's not for the Mopar. Now, just so you know, Part 2 will include a brand new top-end package from TrickFlow that will allow us to make some serious power. Plus, it's getting electronic fuel injection. Now, we predict this engine will crack the 600 horsepower mark without any problems.
And problems are what you want to avoid in engine building, not just because of the cost, but the time and effort that goes into a quality build. Now, after the break, we're going to take you behind the scenes and show you how Mike and I plan all of our engine builds, starting with the short block. Planning an engine build is actually very similar to preparing a gourmet meal. The quality of the ingredients will either make it a success or a great candidate for the garbage disposal. Engine building always starts with questions, common sense, and realistic goals and answers, like these. Number 1, what is the realistic goal for your project or engine? Is it for a daily driver? Is it for a street and strip car? Or is it a purpose-built race engine? In our case, for example, we are planning stage 3 of in-house power mouse with a power goal of between 900 and 1,000 horsepower, so that definitely dictates our parts choices. Number 2, how much work can you do yourself versus relying on someone else? And this includes machine work, assembly, and tool availability. And number 3, which is the big one, what is your budget? It seems that everyone wants to make 1,000 horsepower for under $1,000, and we're not saying that's impossible, it's just impractical. Those engines are called strong, but not for long, and we categorize them as junkyard engines with cheap power adders. There's a little phrase that I like to use, and it rings true with everyone who's trying to make big power very fast. You never have enough time to do it right, but you always have enough time to do it over. And when concerning engines, that gets expensive. Why not spend the extra money and do it right the first time? Our plans always start with the foundation of the build, the engine block. And that's determined by the power level. With our stage 3 small blocks power goal between 900 and 1,000 horsepower, a factory block just won't cut it because they're only good for the mid 500 horse range. Now, admittedly, we've pushed them harder for scientific purposes, but we are always prepared that a structural failure could occur. Aftermarket blocks are purpose-built with stronger materials, more accurate machining, and are designed to withstand the stresses of high-performance applications. With the blocks selected, there's still a lot to consider, and we're going to get to that next time. And we understand that funds dictate projects, so spend your money wisely and plan accordingly, and you can have a great running engine that will last.
What if you could remove rust without any grinding, sanding, or scrubbing? Well, now you can with Evapo-Rust. It's a rust remover that's biodegradable and earth-friendly. Now, it's really cool because it does the work for you. Simply submerge your rusty parts in it and let it sit overnight. Now, here's an example. Here's a before and after on an old rusty intake manifold, and I've got to say, we're impressed with the results. Now, 1 gallon will treat up to 300 pounds of steel, so needless to say, a little goes a long way. Now, it can be reused time and time again until it turns black. That's when you know the fluid is spent. Now, 1 gallon will run you about $22 at any of your local auto parts stores.
Do you refer to both yourself and your ride as a spirited daily driver? Well, Power Stop Brakes has a setup that's right up your alley. This is their Z23 Evolution Sport one-click brake kit, and it contains an engineered component package that can easily handle your performance driving style. The kit has their Evolution Performance bevel drilled, round slotted, zinc plated, and mill balanced rotors that are made with true cast technology and can run up to 180 degrees cooler than OEM ones. Also included are the Z23 Evolution Sport pads made from a carbon ceramic formula that gives better bite without the noise and dust. Premium hardware and lube is included, and you can go to powerstop.com to find your application and buy the entire kit with just 1 click.
Here's one that comes up a lot.
It's a good one.
We get asked on a regular occasion, what octane fuel should I run in my engine? Well, there are several variables to that question. The octane requirements for your engine depends on compression ratio, the type of parts in the engine, like the pistons, as well as the conditions the engine is going to be used in.
Now, the motor octane numbers are determined in a laboratory using a standardized method involving a single-cylinder variable compression ratio carbureted engine. Now, the octane scale goes from 0 to 120, but typical commercial fuels are in the 80 to mid-90 octane range.
So what do the 87, 89, 91, and 93 numbers that you see on the pump mean? Well, the higher the number, the slower the burn rate of the fuel. Now, faster burn rates produce higher cylinder temperatures, and higher cylinder temperatures are what lead to detonation or knock. Now, here's an FYI. Detonation is the auto ignition of the air fuel charge after the spark plug gets a chance to ignite it. Check this out.
Auto ignition or detonation is one of 3 different ways that an engine can ignite the air-fuel charge without the use of the spark plug. The other 2 are pre-ignition and dieseling or engine run-on, but all are affected by motor octane ratings. But for now, we're just going to discuss detonation. When the combustion temp is excessive for the fuel's motor octane rating, it will ignite part of the air-fuel charge nanoseconds after the spark plug fires and lights the other portion of the mixture. The 2 reactions both produce a flame front that propagates from 2 different areas of the chamber, and when they collide, they will produce an audible knock or pinging sound. And the result is a spike in pressure and temperature in that same cylinder, making it even more susceptible to the same reaction on the next compression cycle. And if all the cylinders are doing this, it will lead to catastrophic engine failure like destroyed pistons and engine bearings.
Detonation is not just audible, it's also visual, but you need to be able to read your spark plugs, which takes a little bit of experience. Detonation will leave telltale signs on a spark plug, such as small black flecks on the porcelain, all the way to a light grayish covering of the entire part of the plug that sits inside the combustion chamber. Now, both are examples of vaporized aluminum from the top of the piston or the combustion chamber. That is an indicator that a higher octane fuel and a better tune-up is needed. Now, when we need an octane increase and distilled racing fuel is just not an option, we turn to a proven product we know works. Race gas is a concentrate you mix with pump gas to reach a safe octane level, all the way up to 105.
Well, school's all done for today, so go make some noise with the boys and keep building toys. It's just what we do. See you next time.